The Potara Fusion, the secret weapon of the Supreme Kai is that through the means of earrings being placed on the opposing ears of two different individuals that can unite them into one singular entity. But this weapon and method of fusion turned out to not be as potent as we were once led to believe. For decades, we were under the impression that Potara was the pinnacle of fusion in the Dragon Ball universe, that bound two warriors together for good, resulting in the newly created fused individual living out the rest of their days as one, never again splitting to the two who made them become into being in the first place. A permanent fusion, the price paid for creating a being whose power greatly exceeded those that made up the fusion, a price that would leave you questioning if the fusion was worth it to begin with. Through a combination of questionable writing decisions and the need of convenience, this once straightforward plot point quickly became a convoluted mess that left many in the Dragon Ball fandom irate at the writing decisions that led us to this point. My name is Champazard, and join me as I explore the retcon that resulted in the downfall of the Potara Fusion, a once beloved plot point from Dragon Ball Z that now remains a husk of what it once was. Prior to the introduction of Potara, and earlier in the Buu saga, we were introduced to the fundamentals of fusion in the Dragon Ball universe. This was with Goku informing us about Metamoran Fusion, aka the Fusion Dance, a technique seemingly created by mortals which unites two individuals who are in perfect sync into one singular entity. The process to getting there is vastly different from Potara, but the results are somewhat the same as a new individual is created from the two undergoing the fusion. But the Metamoran Fusion was designed to have its drawbacks that places limits upon the fusion. First of all, the two individuals fusing needs to be in sync to perform the dance to commence the fusion. Secondly, there was a maximum 30-minute time limit. Maximum because under certain circumstances, the fusion can expire earlier, such as when the power output of Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks versus Super Buu drained the remaining time, resulting in defusing prematurely. So while the fusion does grant the fused warrior immense power, it's very finite, meaning if you don't get the job done in the allotted time, the fusion will expire and you will have to wait another hour before being able to refuse. Another drawback of the Metamoran Fusion. These are restrictions placed upon this technique by Toriyama to place extra tension on the fight between Super Buu and Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, with the reader being aware Gotenks could defuse at any moment. This places consequences to not being able to use the fusion correctly. If Gotenks could stay fused without drawback, he'd be able to defeat Super Buu, but the main drawback of the fusion dance is what resulted in him losing the fight. But the Potara Fusion differs greatly from this, with a different set of rules and narrative consequences placed on the fusion. When the Elder Kai first introduces the concept of this fusion to Goku, he says all the users have to do is place the earrings on their opposite ears, which would commence the fusion, which eliminates the need for sync movement with the Metamoran Fusion. The Elder Kai goes on to explain that it'll work even better than the fusion dance, as the Potara is a treasure passed down through the Kais. The two primary differences for the Potara in contrast to the fusion dance is the method used to fuse and the restrictions and consequences placed upon it. While the time limit on the fusion dance would be considered a restriction, the Potara has no such restriction as said by the Elder Kai. It instead has a set of major consequences if fusion is undergone, being that the fusion is permanent, meaning that while the fused warrior wouldn't have to worry about a trivial time limit that could cause their fusion to end prematurely, two individuals will never be able to return to their original state. These are a major set of consequences created by Toriyama to enact what can be considered the opposite issue for the Potara. If the Potara could go endlessly and be unfused whenever the warrior desired, it would be a cheat code that would render the fusion dance particularly useless, making the Potara superior in every conceivable way. But this isn't a Metamoran vs Potara Fusion video. I simply need to establish the original rules for Potara Fusion created by Toriyama in the original Dragon Ball manga. We see these consequences in action as the Elder Kai reveals he had been fused with a witch since very long ago, never unfusing and returning to his original self, though in his case, his personality remained dominant and didn't merge. But in the case of Goku and Vegeta, with them being almost equals on the pecking order of the God Immortal chain, this resulted in them creating an entirely new individuals composed of their two unique personalities combined. As we all know, while Toriyama placed his permanent fusion rule for narrative tension to add to the stakes of the fusion and the fight, Goku and Vegeta would ultimately defuse with no real reason given after being absorbed by Majin Buu. This did show that the fusion wasn't truly permanent after all, but we never really had a true explanation provided. But there was a small attempt to explain the defusing, with Goku mentioning that it might have been the nasty air inside of Majin Buu himself, and the inner workings of his body could have caused the diffusion. But with Dragon Ball Super, retcons were put into place that rewrote how Potara Fusion actually worked. While I tried to explain some of the mysteries left behind from Dragon Ball, this retcon Dragon Ball Super introduced also created a whole new slew of issues itself that need to be addressed. When the Recon was first revealed in the Dragon Ball Super anime, it was met with fierce discord and criticism. I remember the night this episode aired and how upset and disappointed everyone was regarding the Potara Recon and how upset they were that Vegito defused only after a couple minutes of screen time. But the Recon of the nature of Potara differs between the Dragon Ball Super anime and manga, which further convolutes the matter and only creates more confusion. In the anime, Goku and Vegeta make the decision to fuse. Goku questions Gowasu about why the fusion came undone versus Majin Buu, and Gowasu informs Goku that it only lasts 1 hour unless a Supreme Kai is involved. Become Vegito before about 3 minutes of of fighting screen time before becoming unfused with the excuse of too much power shortened the fusion, like with Gotenks and Dragon Ball Z. These events happen differently in the manga. This is where things begin to get more convoluted and confusing. The manga, Gowasu states that Goku and Vegeta need to hold out for 1 hour versus merge Zamasu, and adds that the Potara Fusion will be nullified once it loses its effect. Vegeta questions this, believing the fusion is supposed to be permanent, but reveals that since Zamasu hadn't been anointed an official Supreme Kai yet, the Potara will be limited to the 1 hour time limit for those who are not Supreme Kais, in this case being Zamasu and Goku Black. This is a vast departure from the anime and only furthers the retcon, as none of this was ever cited in the original manga by the Elder Kai of Universe 7. In the anime version of events, we are under the belief that Zamasu was permanently fused and was under no such time limit, as we never see them defuse, nor are these manga comments by Gowasu present in the anime, just the part where the fusion is only 1 hour for those who aren't Supreme Kais. Retcons can be good in some situations if handled well, but the way this retcon was handled seemed to stem from Toriyama and Toyotaro potentially having written themselves into a corner, even though they were easy way outs. This retcon did attempt to explain why Vegeta defused versus Majin Buu, which it successfully does, as it can be assumed the 1 hour time limit was set as Buu absorbed them, but that explanation also creates further issues. The nature of how sudden the retcon was also contributed to the negative reception of it. For weeks, Vegito had been teased to return to the anime, and when it was officially revealed he was, people expected an intense and fun fight between the two Potara fusions for a climactic showdown at the end of the arc, and the manga only for around 11 pages. It was revealed that in Toriyama's original outline of events that Vegito never appeared, and that Toyotaro and Toei made this happen later on. Maybe this also contributes to the retcon, as they needed Goku and Vegeta to be unfused for the arc's climax, but it seems that other amendments could have been made, as we had seen Kibito Kai unfused earlier in Dragon Ball Super with the Dragon Balls, so we knew going into it that the Potara could be undone with a wish. Ultimately, it seems Vegito may have appeared for fan service, and while it was fun to see him, it feels like it could have been so much more. Hey, real fast, if you're enjoying the video, please consider hitting the like button and the subscribe button, as I'm really trying to grow the channel, and I thank you for your support and for watching the video. And consider leaving a comment as well, as it further helps the video in the YouTube algorithm. The poor handling of this retcon also creates further issues going back to the original Dragon Ball manga. We do see Goku and Vegeta defuse, and you can make the argument that this retcon perfectly explains why that happened. Just as Supreme Kai states in the Dragon Ball Super manga chapter 23, as he realizes why Goku and Vegeta actually defused. But Elder Kai was the one who originally introduced us to the concept of Potara, and he seemed confident in his abilities and knowledge regarding it. He himself had been a victim of it, as he was in a permanently fused state. The revelation that there is a 1 hour time limit on the fusion for mortals, and the permanent aspect only applying when a Supreme Kai is involved, are vital pieces of information and the context of this retcon the Elder Kai seem to know nothing about. Essentially, this retcon makes the Elder Kai come off completely ignorant in the whole matter of Potara, when as an experienced Supreme Kai, he should be fully educated on the matter just as Gowasu. He knew the basics of it and it being capable of fusion, plus the permanent side effect. Why would he not know of the specifics of which those circumstances apply? There are certain Heikinen theories that can be created to explain the Elder Kai's shortcoming of knowledge and context of the story, but in reality, we know that the 1 hour time limit and the permanent aspect only applying to Supreme Kais was never a thing that was meant to be in place regarding the Potara in Toriyama's original Dragon Ball manga. These new rules only came around to deepen the tension in the fight with Goku Black in the Dragon Ball Super manga around 2 decades later. It's successful in explaining why the Goku Vegeta defuse versus Buu, but it creates new narrative issues as a result. In a way, I can see it as a retcon seemingly thrown in haphazardly, as it differs also between the anime and manga. In the anime, the plot point of Goku Black and Zamasu defusing is never brought up as it was in the manga, the indication being that Zamasu is recognized as an official Supreme Kai in the anime continuity. By the time the manga reached that point in the arc, Toriyama and Toyotaro opted to go with the route of furthering the story by having the heroes try to survive until Zamasu defused. This only creates further confusion in terms of the story. Zamasu was the Supreme Kai officially in the anime seemingly, but why not in the manga? Also, when Zamasu defuses in the manga, it differs from when Vegito defused. Vegito instantly splits back into Goku and Vegeta, but Zamasu starts splitting down the middle as if attached to the hip with Goku Black and Zamasu. Gowasu attempts to explain this phenomenon as them being joined on the cellular level, being that they are both Zamasu. Goku Black doesn't have the same cells as Zamasu. On the cellular level, he's a Saiyan as he's in Goku's body, further adding to the confusion and the nature of the fusion varying on a case-to-case basis. After Trunks puts them in the middle as they seem on the verge of refusing through sheer force of will, they both go to their separate bodies. Before long, Goku Black and Zamasu both transform into their merged Zamasu appearance, before a whole army of merged Zamasu ends up appearing. It's really impossible to say why they would have been able to refuse through sheer force of will, as I failed to buy Gawasu's explanation on joining at the cellular level. Them retaking their fused form separately is another mess entirely. Another issue created was how Vegito defused in such a short amount of time. One of the shining features of the Potara Fusion was the lack of the time limit, but with this retcon creating the 1 hour time limit, it also resulted in it also suffering from the same weakness that Metamorph Fusion has, that too much power shortens the time limit, which is why Vegito defused after 3 minutes of screen time. This results with the Potara hardly having any competitive advantage over the Metamorph Fusion. While the Potara and the thought of seeing Vegito is enticing, the new and inconsistent rules applied to this mess of the fusion leave it an empty husk of its former self. With these new extreme limitations being imposed on the Potara Fusion, it seems that the Metamorph Fusion might now be the better alternative. Some people may like the retcon of the Potara Fusion being 1 hour and having to be a Supreme Kai to maintain the permanent aspect of the fusion. Some people also might like the aspect of it explaining Goku and Vegeta's fusion all the way back in the Buu saga. And if you like it, that's okay. But I personally have never been a fan of this retcon, as when it was revealed, it came completely out of left field. There had been so much hype for the return of Vegito and seeing Vegito fight Zamasu. Many fans, including myself, were really excited for this return of Vegito, and we expected Vegito vs Zamasu to last multiple episodes, at least. And I think my definition of the future Trunks arc will be a showdown between two Potara Fusions, with Vegito seemingly be the one to fend off Zamasu. Things just got worse following the retcon, with Vegito just having a few minutes of screen time, and Trunks being the one to defeat Zamasu. There's a bitter taste among the fans, as very few people like the ending to the future Trunks arc, in both the anime and the manga. Seeing Vegito for just a few minutes in the anime and just for a few pages of the manga is incredibly disappointing, and it seems like it could have been so much more. Not only did it cause many issues in the continuity of the story with the likes of the Elder Kai and inconsistencies between the anime and the manga regarding the retcon, it also left many people, including myself, disappointed with the conclusion of the arc. Overall, the retcon of the Potara Fusion is something I'm really not a fan of, and I think that the events at the climax of the arc could have been handled much better, with a much more cohesive conclusion. There's several ways they could have taken it, such as using the Dragon Balls to defuse Vegito following the fight. And now we're just left with a bitter taste in our mouth, knowing that if we ever see Vegito again, it probably won't be for very long. But let me know what you think. What do you think of the Potara Fusion retcon? Are you actually a fan of it and glad that it happened, or do you have issues with it like so many others do? And if you're not a fan of it, what are your main issues with it? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, as it greatly helps the channel and I appreciate the support. My name has been Champizard. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.